The season 3 finale of Invincible brought to life the epic battle between Invincible and Conquest, delivering one of the best episodes of Invincible yet, and solidifying it as a perfect adaptation of Robert Kirkman, Cory Walker's, and Ryan Ottley's creation. Hey Internet, I'm Chris, and this is a place on the internet where I talk about comics, movies, games, and things I'm generally passionate about. And before we get into the season 3 finale of Invincible, and why I think it's the perfect comic book adaptation, please leave a like, comment, and subscribe. I, like many others, love Invincible. Season 1 was perfection, Season 2, not so much, and I love Season 3. It was a return to form, and they listened to a lot of the feedback around Season 2, especially that delay, that break between episodes, and I think there was a genuine lack of momentum when it came to that season, and that was not the case with Season 3. You got some epic stories like the Invincible War, Powerplex, and then the arrival of Conquest. And Season 3 had motivated me to dive into the comics. I've been reading all of the Invincible comics through Global Comics, which is a fantastic app, and it's made me admire the series even more, because I feel like it's a real improvement over the comic book. Now, obviously, the comic book adds a lot of color, there's a lot more details, they could dive into certain characters, background characters, but with Robert Kirkman essentially rewriting the entire series with the animated series, it looks like he's kind of digging at certain stories and making them better. Particularly, like, if you look at Season 1, which again was perfection, there are things that they do a lot better in that season. Now, Omniman was evil in the comics as well. That story unfolds a lot quicker in the series, and it's a lot more violent. I think the series definitely dials up the violence. Obviously, the comic book is also violent, but there are things like, for example, the fight between Omniman and Invincible. A lot more graphic, actually, in the TV series, believe it or not. And I feel the performances, and it's great that I know the show gets a lot of crap for spending a lot of its budget on A-list actors to voice these characters, and the animation has suffered in some ways. But when you listen to Aaron Paul's performance as Powerplex, or Jeffrey Dean Morgan absolutely killing it as Conquest, it just elevates some of these characters. And again, Robert Kirkman rewriting the series, there's some things that just are in the show are better, like the monologue between Conquest and Invincible, where he's talking about how lonely he is, and it's literally the most sadistic thing you've ever heard, and you almost feel bad for this homicidal maniac. And that really speaks to how great of a villain Jeffrey Dean Morgan can play. And then you just have Yoon as Mark Grayson really elevating it. Every season he's kind of like killing it, and it's just insane. And now it's great sort of watching the show and reading the comic, because I get to read it in their voices and sort of have that, like the same way I read Batman comics and think of Kevin Conroy. Now I have that voice in my head as I'm going through the comic. And the series is what an adaptation should be. It stays very true to the original intent of the creators, because obviously the creator is making it, but also is adding things for people that don't read the comics, and also adding things for people that have read the comics. You're not completely spoiled because there's added details. There's some stories that unfold differently, and Robert Kirkman has said that potentially there will be stories that maybe were scrapped, or completely new storylines that they're going to put in the show. Like, there's a tease at the end of Season 3 with Dark Blood, so we'll potentially see a story where Invincible goes to hell, something that was not in the comic. And then you also have moments where Conquest makes a heart out of his own blood. Completely new, completely insane, sadistic, a little detail that gives you a sense of who Conquest is, and it makes you scared for Mark's life. It's tinkering with your own work in a good way, because I think Robert Kirkman is really approaching this in a fun way, whereas I think sometimes some creators, when they have the opportunity to maybe change things, you look at George Lucas with his films, sometimes miss the ball. And with Kirkman, he's been able to, again, make the right decision on almost every turn when it comes to making changes in the Invincible animated series. Also, he's done a great job of making these stories very accessible. I'm reading it on Global Comics. Invincible is consistently in print through trades, being reprinted, so it's really accessible. If you're a fan of the series, you could dive into the comics, get something completely new, and I think that's what anime and manga do really well that American superhero comics don't do really well. If you watch a adaptation of your favorite comic book story, like, let's say, I don't know, you liked WandaVision a couple years ago. Now, there isn't a one-to-one WandaVision comic book storyline, but if you're really into that and you're like, oh, I want to read like House of M. At the time, House of M was out of print, so you couldn't even read that. And Invincible, like I said, I was really passionate about it. I'm watching Season 3. I have a subscription to Global Comics, and what do you know? All of Invincible's on there, including some other Robert Kirkman work that is set in the Invincible universe. And then I also have Comixology, so I could dive in there when there's things that aren't on it. So it is literally the perfect adaptation, because as you love it, as you dive into it, as your love grows for the series and the characters, you could just dive back in. You know, we talk about Robert Kirkman being involved, but everyone's involved. You see Corey Walker and Ryan Otley also sharing their love of the animated series. Completely new ideas. Robert is writing the entire series over again for this adaptation, like an amazing second draft. He told me about the extra dialogue, and I thought it was one of the best additions to the whole scene. It added so much to his character, and I'm not sure who came up with that specific blood heart detail, but I'm jealous that I didn't get to draw it. Maybe I will, just for fun. Now, Robert Kirkman has promised that seasons will now come out on an annual cadence, avoiding the mess that was season 2. Now, hopefully that doesn't mean that the quality of the animation takes an even bigger hit, because season 1, if you rewatch it, even clips of it, you can really tell the difference. But I will say that season 3, the story was so strong and the way it was delivered that some of the animation things I didn't really mind, and they really saved it all for the finale. The finale was insane. And after watching it, I'm hoping we see more animation adaptations of comic book stories, because I feel like this is it. This is the way to go. Now, it doesn't completely reinvent the series the way The Boys does on Amazon, but the added details work just as well. Now, what did you guys think of Invincible Season 3? Do you think it's the perfect comic book adaptation the way I do, or do you love the comic more? Let me know. Like, comment, subscribe. Peace.